The gunshot tore through the cabin window 3 seconds after Fletcher Ames kissed his new wife for the first time. Glass exploded inward. Adelaide threw herself sideways, dragging him down behind the heavy oak table as wood splintered above their heads. Her hand moved to her boot, fast, practiced, and came up holding a small revolver Fletcher hadn't known she carried. "Stay low," she hissed, eyes sharp as flint. "Who the hell is shooting at us?" Fletcher demanded. She didn't answer. She was already moving toward the window, low and silent as smoke. That had been 10 minutes ago. Now Fletcher crouched in his own kitchen, married to a stranger, while men with rifles circled his Montana homestead in the dark. This was not what the matrimonial agency had promised. 6 weeks earlier, Fletcher had been alone in town, nursing whiskey at the Timberlake Saloon, when old Sam Drucker slapped a newspaper clipping on the bar. "Matrimonial service out of Denver," Sam said. "Got my nephew hitched last spring. Good woman. Quiet. No nonsense." Fletcher was 42. He'd spent 15 years building his timber operation in the mountains west of Timberlake. He had land, a solid house, money in the bank. What he didn't have was someone to share it with. The silence in his cabin had grown so thick it felt like a living thing. He wrote to the Rocky Mountain Matrimonial Service that night, seeking a quiet, steady woman for companionship and partnership. Must be comfortable with remote living and long winters. No need for beauty or refinement. Only honesty and a willingness to build a life together. The response came 3 weeks later. A single photograph, a woman with dark hair pulled severely back, plain features, eyes that looked directly at the camera without smiling. The letter was brief. Miss Adelaide Frost, age 29, schoolteacher, recently widowed, seeks new beginning in Montana territory, prefers solitude, no family ties, available immediately. Perfect, Fletcher thought. Quiet, self-sufficient, honest. He sent money for her train fare and began preparing the house. She arrived on a cold afternoon in early November, stepping down from the stagecoach in a dark gray traveling dress that had seen better days. She carried one small trunk and a worn leather satchel she held close to her body. Fletcher removed his hat. "Miss Frost, Mr. Ames." Her voice was low, calm. She studied him with those same direct eyes from the photograph. No fear, no flutter, just assessment. "Welcome to Timberlake," he said. "Thank you." The silence that followed felt comfortable somehow. Neither of them seemed to need empty talk. They were married the next morning by Pastor Whitley in the small church at the edge of town. Adelaide wore the same gray dress. Fletcher wore his only suit. There were no guests, no celebration, just vows spoken quietly and a signature in the parish register. Afterward, they rode to his cabin in the mountains. The November sky hung low and gray. Snow threatened but hadn't yet fallen. "It's a day's ride to town," Fletcher said as they climbed the winding trail through tall pines. "Nearest neighbor is 5 miles south. Winters are hard. I run timber crews, so I'm gone during the day, but I'm home by dark. I'm accustomed to solitude," Adelaide replied. "The agency said you were a schoolteacher." A pause. "Yes." "Where?" "Kansas." The word came quick and flat, like a door closing. He didn't press. Everyone who came west carried something they'd rather leave behind. The cabin stood in a clearing surrounded by forest. Solid log construction, stone chimney, glass windows Fletcher had hauled from town himself. Inside, everything was orderly. Clean floors, sturdy furniture, shelves lined with books. Adelaide moved through the rooms slowly, touching nothing, observing everything. "You keep a tidy house," she said. "I try." She set her satchel on the table, but kept her hand near it. "I'll earn my keep. I can cook, mend, keep accounts if you need it. I'm not looking for a servant." Her eyes met his. "Then what are you looking for, Mr. Ames?" Someone who won't make the silence feel so heavy. Something softened in her face. "Just for a moment. I can do that." That evening, they worked together preparing supper. She moved efficiently, no wasted motion. They spoke little, but it didn't feel awkward. Over elk stew and cornbread, Fletcher asked careful questions. She answered some, deflected others. "Do you have family back in Kansas?" "No." "Your husband? How long ago did he pass?" 2 years. Her fingers tightened on her spoon. "I'd rather not speak of it." "All right." After supper, he built up the fire. Adelaide sat near it, hands folded in her lap, staring into the flames with an expression he couldn't read. "I'll sleep on the floor tonight," Fletcher said. Until you're comfortable. She turned to him, surprise clear on her face. You're a gentleman, Mr. Ames. Just Fletcher. Adelaide. He nodded. Rest well, Adelaide. She stood then, crossed the room, and kissed him. It was brief, almost formal, but deliberate. Thank you for giving me a new start, she said quietly. That was when the window exploded. Now, crouched in the dark with gunfire echoing outside, Fletcher watched his new wife move like someone who'd done this before. And he realized he didn't know her at all. Blow out the lamp, Adelaide commanded. Fletcher obeyed, plunging the cabin into darkness. Outside, boots crunched on frozen ground. At least 3 men, maybe 4. Adelaide, how many rifles do you own? She interrupted. 2. 1 above the mantel, 1 in the bedroom. Get them. Now. He crawled toward the fireplace while she stayed low near the window, peering through the shattered glass into the moonlit clearing. Her revolver never wavered. Fletcher retrieved both rifles, checked the loads, brought one to her. She took it without looking away from the window. You want to tell me who they are? He asked. Bounty hunters. The words hit him like cold water. For what? Not now. She shifted position. They'll try the back door next. Can you cover it? His mind reeled, but his body moved. He positioned himself near the rear entrance, rifle raised. Outside, a voice called through the darkness. Adelaide Frost. We know you're in there. Come out peaceable and nobody gets hurt. She didn't respond. You're wanted in Colorado, Wyoming, and Kansas, the voice continued. $500, dead or alive. Your husband don't need to die for your crimes. Fletcher's stomach turned. Adelaide. I didn't kill anyone, she said quietly, still watching the clearing. I swear to you, Fletcher, I'm not a murderer. Then what did you do? A long pause. Then, I stole from men who deserved to lose what they had. Before he could respond, the back door shuddered under a heavy boot. Fletcher fired through the wood. A man screamed and stumbled backward. You just shot a bounty hunter, Adelaide said, something almost like admiration in her voice. He was breaking into my house. Legally speaking, they have a warrant. Legally speaking, they can go to hell. She glanced at him then, really looked at him. A ghost of a smile crossed her face. You surprise me, Fletcher Ames. The front door exploded inward. Fletcher spun and fired. A figure dove sideways, cursing. Adelaide shot twice through the window. Glass rained down. We're outnumbered, she said calmly. Do you have a root cellar? Under the kitchen floor. Show me. They crawled across the cabin as bullets punched through the walls. Fletcher pulled back the rug and lifted the heavy trapdoor. The cellar below was small, dark, cold, but it had one advantage. A tunnel. I dug it out 3 years ago, Fletcher explained as they dropped down. Leads to the woodshed. In case of fire. Adelaide stared at him in the dim light. You're full of surprises yourself. They crawled through the narrow tunnel, dirt crumbling around them. Behind them, boots thundered inside the cabin. Shots echoed. They emerged in the woodshed. Fletcher eased the door open. The clearing was empty. The bounty hunters had all moved inside. The stable, Adelaide whispered. We take the horses and run. This is my land, Fletcher said. I'm not running. Fletcher, there are 4 armed men who broke into my home and terrorized my wife. She froze. Your wife. That's what you are, isn't it? For the first time since the shooting started, Adelaide looked uncertain. You don't know what I've done. Then tell me. She swallowed hard. After my husband died, I had nothing. His debts fell to me. Men came collecting. Bankers, landowners, men who'd held markers against him. They wanted payment. When I couldn't give money, they wanted. She stopped. I left Kansas with only what I could carry. That's not a crime. What I did next was. Her voice hardened. I went to Denver. Got work in a gambling house. Learned to deal cards. Learned to read men. And I started taking from the ones who cheated others. I'd palm their money, forge their notes, ruin their tables. I gave most of it to women like me. Widows drowning in their husbands' debts. You're a thief. A thief with a conscience. She met his eyes. But yes, a thief. Gunfire erupted from the cabin again. They were searching. Fletcher made a decision. Can you ride hard? Yes. Then we get to town. Pastor Whitley will vouch for you. So, will I. Fletcher, a warrant, is just paper until someone enforces it. And I know every man in Timberlake. They're not taking you without a fight. Something shifted in her expression. Not hope exactly, but something close. They ran for the stable. Fletcher saddled 2 horses while Adelaide kept watch. As they mounted, shouts erupted behind them. The bounty hunters had found the tunnel. They rode hard through the forest, branches whipping past, the cold air burning their lungs. Behind them, pursuit crashed through the trees. "There's a ridge ahead," Fletcher shouted. "We can lose them in the rocks." They climbed fast, the horses sure-footed on the steep trail. At the top, Fletcher reined in. "Listen to me," he said urgently. "Whatever you did in Denver, whatever you're running from, I don't care. You came here for a new start. I'm giving you one." "Why?" Adelaide demanded. "You don't know me." "I know you kissed me before the shooting started," Fletcher said. "I know you could have run and didn't. I know you're brave and sharp, and you're the first person in 15 years who's made this life feel less lonely." Tears shone in her eyes. Below, the bounty hunters were closing in. "So here's what we're going to do," Fletcher continued. "We ride into Timberlake. We tell the truth. And we let the town decide if the law matters more than a woman trying to survive." Adelaide stared at him. Then she nodded once. They rode down the far side of the ridge toward town, not running anymore. Riding together. They reached Timberlake just before dawn. The town was dark except for a single lamp burning in Pastor Whitley's window. He was an early riser, always had been. Fletcher pounded on the door. The pastor opened it, took one look at their faces, and stepped aside. "Trouble?" he asked. "The worst kind," Fletcher said. "We need your help." They sat in his small parlor while Adelaide told her story. All of it. The debts. Denver. The gambling house. The men she'd stolen from and why. Pastor Whitley listened without interrupting, his weathered face unreadable. When she finished, silence filled the room. "How much did you take?" the pastor finally asked. "Near $3,000. Over 2 years. And you gave it away?" "Most of it. To women who needed it more than the man I took it from." Pastor Whitley leaned back in his chair. "That's still theft, Miss Frost." "Mrs. Ames," Fletcher corrected quietly. The pastor's eyebrows lifted. "You're standing by her?" "I am. Even knowing she's wanted?" "Especially knowing." Fletcher looked at Adelaide. "She came here for a new start. I intend to give her one." Adelaide's hand found his across the table. Pastor Whitley stood. "Then we'd better wake the sheriff." Sheriff Tom Bellamy was not happy about being roused before sunrise, but he came. So did Mayor Sutton. By the time the sun rose, half the town had gathered in the church. The bounty hunters arrived an hour later. 4 hard-faced men with rifles and warrants. Their leader, a man named Cade, slapped the papers on the sheriff's desk. "Adelaide Frost is wanted in 3 territories," Cade said. "We're taking her back to Denver to stand trial." "She's Adelaide Ames now," Fletcher said. "And she's not going anywhere." Cade smirked. "The law don't care what name she uses." Sheriff Bellamy studied the warrant carefully. He was a fair man, deliberate, not easily pressured. "The warrant's legal," he said finally. Fletcher's heart sank. But the sheriff wasn't finished. "However," he continued, "the crimes listed here are all property crimes. No violence. No murder." He looked at Adelaide. "Is that accurate?" "Yes, sir," she said quietly. "And the men you stole from, were they honest men?" "No, sir. They were cheats and swindlers themselves." Bellamy nodded slowly. He turned to the crowd that had gathered. "Folks, we've got a situation here. Woman breaks the law in other territories, comes here for a fresh start, marries one of our own. Now bounty hunters want to take her back." He paused. "Question is, do we let them?" "Law's the law," someone muttered. "She's one of ours now," countered Mrs. Pruitt from the general store. "Married legal and proper." "She's a thief," Cade interjected. "She's a survivor," Fletcher said. "And if taking from men who prey on widows is a crime, then half the frontier's guilty." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Mayor Sutton stepped forward. "Sheriff, what are our options here?" Bellamy scratched his jaw. "Legally, I'd have to turn her over. But," he looked at Cade, "Montana Territory has the right to refuse extradition if the accused is a resident and the crime was nonviolent." "She ain't been here long enough to be a resident," Cade argued. "She's married to a landowner," the sheriff replied. "That makes her a resident in my book." Cade's face darkened. "You're protecting a criminal. I'm protecting a citizen." The bounty hunter's hand moved toward his gun. Fletcher stepped forward, rifle raised. "So did a dozen other men from town." "You won't make it 10 feet, Fletcher said quietly. Cade looked around, saw the wall of armed townspeople, and calculated his odds. Slowly, he lowered his hand. "This ain't over," he said. "Yes," It is, Sheriff Bellamy replied. Now get out of my town. The bounty hunters left, cursing and bitter. The crowd lingered, watching them ride away. When they were gone, Adelaide turned to Fletcher. You just made enemies for me. We made enemies, he corrected. We're married, remember? She smiled then, really smiled, for the first time since he'd met her. I remember. 6 months later, spring had come to the mountains. The cabin Fletcher had rebuilt after the shooting stood strong, with new glass in the windows and fresh timber on the porch. Adelaide worked in the garden she'd planted, her hands deep in dark soil. She'd proven herself a dozen times over, helping with the timber accounts, cooking for the crews, even teaching reading to the children in town 2 days a week. No one called her a thief anymore. They called her Mrs. Ames. Fletcher emerged from the stable, watching her work. She glanced up and caught him staring. What? She asked. Just thinking. About how I paid for a quiet wife. She laughed. And instead they sent you a woman wanted in 3 territories. Best money I ever spent. She stood, brushing dirt from her hands, and crossed to him. No regrets. Not a single one. She kissed him, longer this time, deeper. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright. I have something to tell you. Good or bad? Good. Very good. She took his hand and placed it gently against her stomach. We're going to have a child. Fletcher's breath caught. For a moment, he couldn't speak. Then he pulled her close, holding her like she might disappear. I love you, Adelaide Ames, he whispered. I love you too, Fletcher. That evening, they sat together on the porch as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and fire. The silence between them was comfortable now, filled not with loneliness but with contentment. Adelaide rested her head on his shoulder. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if those bounty hunters had come 1 day earlier? I'd have fought them just the same, even without knowing me. I knew enough. He kissed the top of her head. Sometimes the best things in life come with a little trouble attached. She smiled. Only a little? All right. A lot of trouble. They sat together as darkness fell. 2 people who'd found each other in the unlikeliest of ways. A lonely timberman seeking quiet companionship, and a woman running from her past. Neither had gotten exactly what they'd expected. They'd gotten something better. They'd gotten home.